Mac walked up to the diagram of the great white's internal organs. "You say we got to implant this little dart near the shark's heart. Where the hell is that?" Jonas pointed to the great white's mouth. "If you follow the path into the mouth and through the esophagus, the heart should be located just below the point where the esophagus connects with the stomach. Of course, this is the anatomy of a great white shark. No one knows for sure how the internal organs of a megalodon are laid out. We have to assume that the two species are not only physically similar, but anatomically as well. If we can shoot the tracking dart about here," Jonas pointed to a location along the underbelly of the shark between its gill slits and pectoral fins, "I think we'll be okay." Mac shook his head. "And if we miss?" The full moon reflected off the windshield of the helicopter, illuminating the interior of the small compartment. For nearly 4 hours, Mac had flown his chopper along a 30-mile semicircular patch of ocean, hovering 200 feet above the Black Pacific. They had located nearly 24 pods of whales without seeing a trace of the megalodon, and the initial excitement Jonas had felt was quickly fading into boredom as he realized just how difficult their task was going to be. "Look ahead, Mac, about 11 o'clock. There's another pod of humpbacks. Let's follow them a while, then we'll turn back." "You're the boss." Mac changed course to intercept the pod. Jonas focused on the Pacific with his ITT Night Mariner Gen 3 binoculars. The night glasses penetrated the dark, improving light amplification by using a coating of gallium arsenide on the photocathode of the intensifier. The Black Sea now appeared a pale shade of gray, revealing the quickly moving behemoths as they rose up and down along the surface of the Pacific. Mac had borrowed the infrared thermal imager from the Coast Guard. Mounted below the helicopter was a small gyro-stabilized platform which held the thermal imager pod in place. Inside the cabin was a television monitor attached to a video recorder. The thermal imager was designed to detect objects in the water by the electromagnetic radiation the object emitted. The internal temperature of a warm body would appear on the monitor as a hot spot against the image of the cold sea. The warm-blooded whales were easily detected. The megalodon's internal temperature would be slightly cooler. Jonas was worried. It was vital that the megalodon be located quickly. With each hour that passed, the circumference of the female's predicted course would extend an additional 20 miles. Soon there would simply be too much ocean to cover, even with their sophisticated tracking equipment. Jonas was exhausted. He felt himself becoming mesmerized by the moonlight dancing across the ocean, barely noticing the white blur streak across his peripheral vision. The moon had illuminated something below the surface. For a moment it had seemed to glow. "See something, Doc?" "Not sure." The helicopter hovered above the pod, keeping pace as the whales changed direction, turning north. To the south, a white glow appeared, streaking beneath the surface like a giant luminescent torpedo. Mac saw her on the monitor. "Holy shit, I can't believe it. You actually found her. What's she doing?" Jonas looked at Mac. "I think she's stalking a calf." 100 feet below the Black Pacific, a deadly game of cat and mouse was taking place. The humpback sonar had detected the hunter's presence miles back, the mammals altering their course to avoid a confrontation. As the albino predator closed to intercept, the two cows moved to surround the calf, the larger bulls taking positions at the front and rear of the pod. The megalodon slowed, circling to the right of her quarry. The warm-blooded creatures were larger than the female, their close formation preventing a direct attack. The humpbacks remained close to the surface, continuously breaching, nervously observing their unwanted guest. The megalodon circled once more, sizing up her prey, marking the position of the calf. As the predator crossed in front of the leader, the 40-ton bull broke from the group and made a run at the meg. Although the humpback whale possessed baleen instead of teeth, it was still quite dangerous, able to ram the female with its enormous head. The male humpback's charge was sudden, but the meg was too quick, accelerating away from the pod, then returning in a wide arc. "What do you see?" Jonas was peering through the night glasses. "Looks like the lead bull is chasing the megalodon away from the pod." "Wait a minute, did you say the whale's chasing the meg?" Mac chuckled. "I thought this megalodon of yours was supposed to be fearsome." Jonas loaded the tracking dart, snapping it into the custom-designed barrel of his rifle. Don't be fooled, Mac. Don't be fooled. The pod once again altered its course, heading southeast to lose the hunter. But the Meg's wide circular path intersected that of the two cows. The lead bull again turned to intercept, and this time the Meg retreated to the rear, leading the bull farther away from the safety of the pod's numbers. As the male humpback turned to rejoin the others, the predator circled quickly, intercepting the isolated bull along its flank. With a frightening burst of speed and power, the megalodon launched her 42,000 pounds of muscle and teeth at the retreating humpback. Her upper jaw hyperextended away from her mouth, her bite radius expanding to its full 9 feet, sinking into the helpless humpback's huge fluke. In a fraction of a second, the razor-sharp upper rows of teeth sliced through the muscular tail of the whale before the mammal knew what had happened. So large and powerful was the bite that it completely amputated the fluke from the apex of the whale's tail. The bull writhed in a violent contortion as the megalodon swallowed its prize whole. An agonizing high-pitched moan reverberated from the bleeding beast. Warm blood gushed from the gaping wound as the crippled humpback feebly attempted to propel itself forward with its massive lateral flippers. The megalodon's second attack came from the front, and was even more devastating than the first. Seizing the baleen-fringed edges of the dying creature's mouth within its 9-inch fangs, the Meg ripped and tore apart an entire section of the humpback's throat, whipping its enormous head to and fro as a long strip of grooved hide and blubber peeled away from the mammal's body, like the husk from an ear of corn. Helplessly drifting in the ocean's swells, the tortured humpback wailed a death song of agony. Fleeing in panic, the rest of the pod propelled themselves as one body away from the carnage. The megalodon did not pursue, but instead continued to feast on the soft flesh of her prey, swallowing thousands of pounds of warm blood and blubber, obsessed with her kill, oblivious to all else. And then the Meg sensed the rapid vibrations from above. "What's happening, Jonas?" "It's hard to tell, Mac. There's so much blood. What's your thermal imager picking up?" "No good, Doc. The blood's spreading out over the surface, and it's so warm that it's camouflaging any objects the imager could pick up. I'll have to bring us closer." "Not too close, Mac. There's no predicting what the Meg might do." "Relax, you want to get a good shot, don't you?" Mac descended to 50 feet. "Can you see any better now?" Jonas looked through the night glasses. Yes. Now he could just make out the megalodon's white hide, her glow minimized by the warm blood pooling along the surface. Then, as Jonas watched, she simply disappeared. Damn. What? She went deep. I wonder if the vibrations from the copter scared her off, or maybe she feels threatened by our presence around her kill. Jonas searched the sea below. He could see the dark shadow of the dead humpback floating in its entrails. Where was the Meg? "Mac, I've got a bad feeling about this. Take us higher." "Higher? God damn it, Mac, higher, now!" The megalodon launched straight out of the sea like an intercontinental ballistic missile, flying at the hovering helicopter faster than Mac could increase his altitude. Jonas slid out of his seat, his right foot losing its grip on the floor as the G-force of the copter's climb pushed him toward the open door. Only the seatbelt kept his body from falling into the night, where the garage-sized head closed quickly, its bloodied fangs reaching for him now only 5 feet away. As if in slow motion, Jonas watched the upper jaw jut forward of the mouth, revealing crimson-red gums and white teeth. So close he could have kicked them with his dangling right leg, but he couldn't move, paralyzed with fear, his body dangling out of the open copter door. Somehow he held on, whipping his leg back into the cockpit as the jaws slammed together where his limb had been. The vision of white death was still rising. The copter reached 60 feet just as the broad snout connected from below, sending the airship sideways and out of control. The cabin began spinning. "Come on, goddammit!" Mac clutched his control stick with both hands. The copter was slicing toward the sea at a 30-degree angle when the rotors finally caught air. Mac pulled the chopper out of its nosedive seconds short of plunging into the Pacific. The pilot groaned with relief as his airship soared above the waves, making its getaway. "God damn, Jonas! I think I just shit my pants." Jonas fought to catch his breath. His limbs were quivering, his voice abandoning him. After a good minute, he forced the words out of his parched throat. She's a lot bigger than I thought." He tried to swallow. "Mac, how high?" How high were we when she hit us? About 60 feet. Shit, look at me. I'm still quivering like a little girl. Did you get a shot off? Jonas looked at the rifle, still held tightly in his right hand. No, she caught me off guard. Do we have enough fuel to circle back? Negative. I'll radio the Kiku to rendezvous, then we'll follow the trail. They flew without speaking for several minutes. Tell me something, asked Mac, finally ending the silence. That monster. Is that what you saw coming at you in the Mariana Trench 7 years ago? Jonas looked at his friend. Yeah, Mac. That's what I saw. Maggie leaned forward uncomfortably in the high-backed leather chair, afraid to relax, knowing how easy it would be to simply lie back on the soft cushion and doze off. She had taken a late-night flight in from Guam, Bud picking her up in his limo at the airport. She'd come straight to the television station and now felt her blood pressure rising as she waited impatiently for Fred Henderson to get off the phone. Finally, she stood up over his desk and snatched the receiver out of his hand. "He'll have to call you back," she said into the mouthpiece, and hung up. "Maggie, what the hell do you think you're doing? That was an important call." "Important my ass. You were talking to your goddamn accountant. You want to make some money? Listen to what I have to say." For the next 30 minutes, she briefed her station manager about the megalodon story. "Damn, this really is big. You're absolutely sure about David Adeshek's information?" "I've been paying Adeshek to follow Jonas for the last few weeks. He's reliable." Henderson leaned back in his leather chair. "And how can we be sure that your husband really knows where this monster's headed?" "Listen, Fred, if there's one subject my soon-to-be ex-husband knows about, it's these damn megasharks. Christ, he's spent more time studying them over the last 7 years than being with me. This is the biggest story to hit this century. Every news agency in the world is headed toward Guam. Let me run with this, Fred, and I'll get you an exclusive that will rocket this station to the top." Henderson was sold. "Okay, Maggie. I'm going to call the network. You've got carte blanche. Now tell me what you need." Bud was reading the paper when Maggie rapped on the back window of the limousine an hour and a half later. When he unlocked the door, she ripped it open, climbed onto his lap, and planted a huge kiss on his lips. "We got it, Bud. He loves it. The network agreed to back me up on everything." She kissed him again, pushing her tongue into his mouth, then came up for air and leaned her forehead against his. "Bud," she whispered, "this is really the one, the story that makes me an international star, and you'll be there with me. Bud Harris, executive producer. Right now, though, I really need your help." Bud smiled, enjoying the con. "Okay, darling, just tell me what you need." "For starters, we'll need the Magnate and a skeleton crew. I've already spoken with 3 cameramen and a sound guy who have underwater experience. We'll all be meeting on board the Magnate tomorrow morning. Fred's spoken with a plexiglass company that can have something for us in 2 days. Plexiglass? The real challenge is the bait. That's where I'm really going to need your help, baby." The Kiku was anchored next to the USS John Hancock, the 563-foot Spruance-class destroyer that had arrived in port earlier that morning. Commander McGovern had personally granted Masao Tanaka the berth. Now a harpoon gun was being mounted at the stern of the ship by Captain Barr's men. On deck, Jonas and Mac watched DeMarco check and double-check the battery system on the Abyss Glider 1. The AG-1 was a smaller, sleeker version of the deep-sea sub used in the Mariana Trench. Designed for speed, the one-man torpedo-shaped sub weighed a mere 462 pounds, with the majority of that weight located in the instrument panels in the Lexan nose cone. "Looks like a miniature jet fighter," said Mac. "Handles like one, too," Jonas added. "Is this what the kid was attacked in?" "No," said Jonas. "The AG-2 was bigger, the hull thicker and much heavier. The AG-1 was the prototype. It was designed for depths of only 4,000 meters. The hull is made of pure aluminum oxide, extremely sturdy but positively buoyant. This baby can move fast, turn on a dime, even leap straight out of the water." "Yeah? Can it outleap the monster we saw last night?" Jonas looked at his friend.